Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Gut Honest Truth. I'm your host and founder, Katie Morra. And for anyone new, I am a registered dietitian and certified functional medicine practitioner through the Institute for Functional Medicine. So, welcome, and I have an amazing guest and special treat for you all, Ms. Dasha Agoulnik. She is also a fellow registered dietitian, as well as you hold your master's in nutritional epidemiology, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. So many of you might follow her, and if you are not, you should on Instagram as Fitness. Ooh, Dasha Fitness.
Yes, ma'am.
So look her up, follow her. She offers a lot of great free information for y'all. And she is the founder of CorePerform. So why don't you do a little bit more of an introduction on yourself and tell us about CorePerform and the other amazing things you're starting?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So my name is Dasha. I am a registered dietitian and I do nutrition research consulting. I dabble in bodybuilding, so I'm quite the fitness freak, you could say. But I just really love experimenting with the body and seeing how what we eat kind of being my own science experiment in a way. So yeah, I'm releasing a new protein powder. I have in like a month, we'll be releasing the protein powder on Amazon. And the reason why I created it was because I personally have celiac disease. I was diagnosed about 2 years ago. And ever since then, I've just been struggling to find a protein powder that has no gums in it, no artificial sweeteners, is plant-based so that the whey is just not disrupting my stomach. And so I was like, you know what? I'm so fed up with all the crap in this industry. I'm just going to make my own. So that's where I am now. I have clients that I'm putting through CorePerform, which is basically a protocol, a 12-week protocol to lower inflammation, find your food sensitivities. It's a semi-elimination diet. And I basically took all the micronutrients responsible for fat metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, and I found the foods that they were found in, and I made it a really easy to follow guide in red, green, yellow kind of things so that every single day you knew that you were optimizing your micronutrients, but also reducing inflammation. So I put my clients through that, and then at the end, they've kind of healed their guts by that. They've found exactly what foods are causing their sensitivities. And they've also gained a respect for the underlying root cause, as well as an understanding of why they're constipated, why they have diarrhea. How do you combat this? How do you go out on the weekends, have a beer, and then still be able to have full control of your gut health? So that's kind of what I teach. And that's what leads me here today, is to talk about fitness and gut health. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we're pumped to have you here. So, I mean, you truly are doing food as medicine and kind of doing the work for people while they put the work in to get the results. So that's
Right.
that's
It's
a
not
win-win.
easy.
Yeah.
It is not easy. People come to me all the time. They're like, they think that I focus on food, and I do. I do focus on food, but by the end of it, they realize how much their minds actually have changed over this course, because your mind has so much control over your gut, as we know with the gut-brain axis. Learning that and like the education is like priceless, right?
Yeah. I'm a big believer with my patients and clients that if you don't understand something, you won't do it. So obviously not always true for everyone who can just like follow instructions, but a permanent like solution and flip in their lives. I'm big on education. I don't know if you practice, it sounds like you do practice that way as well with your clients and coaching.
Yeah, all my clients actually get access to a 71-page ebook, as well as a gut health e-course that they go through. So they are filled with education, all the references to really. They say it's overwhelming, and then they realize that, like, oh, like, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. In the end, and they probably get to sift through it in their own time. So that's amazing. Um, so yeah. So how'd you get into the fitness? Tell me a little bit about that.
So I used to
I've never
be.
asked you that.
I know, it's actually kind of a personal story. I was in a sorority in college, and I just remember like being so scrawny. And one of my friends was like, "Oh, Dasha, my chickadee," and I was like, "Excuse me." I was like, "Why am I your chickadee?" And she was like, "Chicken legs," and I was like, That's it.
Well, you've
I was,
showed them.
I was like, I am going to get strong. So from that point on, I got really, really fascinated. But my undergrad degree was in biology. So I was always really fascinated in like, how do you kind of optimize your metabolism, your body composition? How do
Yeah.
you do those things?
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of got into it.
I started out as bio too. It ended up being my minor and actually have my degrees in psychology. So then
Oh,
so then I went back to school to
oh,
become a dietitian.
oh,
So
cool.
yeah, people don't usually know that. I'm like, I kind of run the gamut there on random things I've studied. So awesome. So that was a great introduction. And so not everyone you work with is like trying to do performance though, correct?
Correct. Most people actually aren't necessarily working on fitness. A lot of people actually take this time to learn intuitive eating. And one of the things that I do, for example, is a lot of people come to me tracking their calories, their
Yeah.
macros, almost having obsessive habits about it. And I transition them slowly into what I call an exchange program. I'm sure you've heard of it. For RDs, they're commonly known as diabetic exchanges. Um, People in eating disorder recovery clinics also use them. And basically, it's kind of like a gateway that I've found works really well for these people who have spent so long tracking macros, being so anal about it, and then transitioning towards something more freedom based. And what I preach is that food freedom, because I do want you to have that flexibility and that ability to just go out on the weekends and not worry that like you can't
Mm-hmm.
have, for example, that cheese platter because I feel like I'm going to have diarrhea in the middle of my meal, and I feel restricted as a result of it, and it just creates all these horrible tendencies. So I preach food freedom, and I really do try and get that social aspect for all my clients. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so refreshing because I do a lot of restrictive diets for treatment purposes, right? Not for lifestyle. And
Yeah.
people, even just during then, I've stopped I would say like 70% of the time or more in my practice. I'm rarely even talking about food outside of optimizing what they're doing. Like I'm not trying, people are like, what do I need to remove? And I'm like, nothing. Cause right, mine's more focusing on removal of different things and in their gut and what have you with, you know, herbals and things like that. But I don't like to remove food if I don't have to for someone. There's a lot you can do because a lot of my patients do come in actually already quite restricted and already eating really well. So it's clearly like the inflammation further stemming like in the body isn't necessarily stemming from that diet for a lot of them. Some aren't, but a lot of mine are. So, so you told me a little bit about the diet plan that you use, but so do you focus at all on ketogenic diets or any like mild keto with people, or you try to avoid that, especially for performance purposes?
Right. I try and avoid keto as much as possible. I actually had a client who came to me who was suffering from chronic constipation that actually was causing her to have GERD. She was on Linzess and she was doing keto because for so many years she was having this GERD that she couldn't understand. She was trying every single fad diet that there was.
Yeah.
And she came to me. I got her completely off keto immediately. I was like, no. The gut loves variety, right? So it loves as much variety in the diet as possible, which is my end goal for everyone. I always say, like, just because you don't tolerate dairy well now, doesn't mean that in the future we cannot reintroduce it. And like, same thing with whole grains, something like sourdough bread. There's always options to introduce new foods. We just have to restore the lining first. There's just too much inflammation right now. So I'm a huge proponent of as much variety in the diet as possible. With her, we ended up, so she was keto to start on Linzess, suffering with GERD, constipation. We trained her bowel, made sure that she was going to the bathroom every day using literally no supplementation, just by her eating habits. I had her bowel training, helping with her stomach acids. And yeah, we got her completely off of Linzess. She started going to the bathroom every single day, is eating so many more carbs. And we've transitioned now more to focus on restoring her hormones because as a result of all that constipation and the GERD, her hormones were off, and now we're trying to go in the other direction.
Yeah, and for anyone listening, Linzess is just a medication that a lot of doctors, especially GIs, use to move the bowels. So if you're constipated, they'll do that. And so so that was a question I had for you, was on your bowel retraining, like a couple tips and things you do with people to naturally, because so many people in the world, some people don't even know this, that they're doing it, are reliant on anything from like magnesium citrate to laxatives, right? They're relying on something to move their bowels. And they say they're not constipated, yeah, but they're constipated, right? They're relying on things externally to move stuff. And a lot of people use magnesium for sleep, and they don't. They're, well, I'm not constipated. I'm like, what kind of magnesium? And they're using something like calm powder, natural vitality calm,
that's
which is
my favorite one.
And they're like, I use it for sleep. I'm like, you're also using it for your bowels and you have no idea. So,
Like I took it out. I'm like, and now I'm constipated. I'm like, yeah, well,
because you're always constipated.
this is fine.
Yeah. So are there any, I know you and I chatted in our own time about like squatty potty type of usage. Like I use that at my house. I love it. I recommend it for a lot of people, but I don't know if there's anything else that you like to use for people or advise.
Yeah. So usually my go-to bowel training regimen for people is that I have them do 10 minutes in the morning, right? First thing when they wake up, just sit on the toilet 10 minutes with your feet propped up, no pushing, no nothing unless your body wants to. I'm not here trying to get people hemorrhoids, right? We do not need like pushing
and straining.
Yeah, you do not need to do that. All you need to do is just kind of sit in that position where your thighs are comfortably kind of putting pressure on your colon, on your lower abdomens, and just sit there for about 10 minutes. And then I like to repeat that 2 more times in the day. So I have them do that first thing in the morning. And then I have them do it about 45 minutes after lunch and about 45 minutes after dinner. And again, this is just to kind of tell the body like, oh, you should be moving these things right now. Mm-hmm. And honestly, the hardest thing is to get people to stick with it. But the people who stick with it are night and day differences. Like, for example, the keto client I just talked about, she was adamant about it. And literally, she went from constipated for a week to daily movement. So yeah, I'm telling you, your body, as we get talking into muscles, it is a muscle. And you do have to train it just like you would train something at the gym. And you cannot expect it from one week to the next to grow in size, to learn something new. It takes time to build a muscle, and it takes time to retrain that bowel.
Yeah, and your body wants to heal. It wants to heal itself, and it wants to learn to optimize. So I think people forget that. They always think like they have so much hate for their own body when they're sick and things like that. But it's actually trying to heal. You just sometimes need to work with a professional to have that guidance on how, right? Because we don't always know the right answer. When it comes to fitness and training, do you find more of your clients that are focused on the training more so, or even just, friends and people in the field struggle more with the food fear and the restrictions with training, like they're overtraining, under eating?
I think I honestly think everyone struggles with it. I am sad to admit it. I think that, for example, I had one client this week in check-ins. I bumped up all her starch exchanges, and she was like, she's losing weight. She lost like 2 pounds. Yeah. And she's like, I'm freaking out. I'm eating this many carbs. I'm like, you're seeing the right direction. Like, we're moving in the right direction here, but you still have that preconceived fear because of what you've been told and taught growing up. And I'm like, you got to trust me. I'm here to fuel your performance, to get you to your goals. I'm like, you literally have abs in this picture all of a sudden, and last week you didn't. Like,
I saw that post. Yeah. And so many people, whether they're athletes or not, like a majority of especially women, but everyone that I work with, they I constantly am telling people they're not eating enough, right? They're trying to lose weight or they're trying to tone or something, and they start like getting on the exercise bike and doing their thing. So they start they're not going crazy, right? They're not training for a competition and like in the fitness world, they are just doing exercise way more than they used to, and they are restricting their eating, right? And that is a huge problem in the end if they're not consuming enough to help them actually metabolize and burn.
Right. And a lot of clients actually, I've found, is the ones who do track their macros. What I've been seeing here and there is that once they actually lower the inflammation, they're able to eat almost 200 to 500 calories more in a day. So they end up increasing their macros just to maintain, just because they've healed their gut and they've lowered the inflammation, and their body's able to process things better.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not digesting and absorbing the nutrients in the food and the calories, or you're feeding that bacteria that then put those calories on you or that weight on you, it's a problem. So your diet plans and structure probably remove a lot of that, you know what I mean? That then allows the body to optimally do its thing. So that's awesome. I didn't know if there was a correlation between fitness and over abusing it to a degree, you know what I mean? Over abusing the exercise, but it sounds like it runs that gamut.
Yeah, I think, it does, but it also does for the common person. What girl doesn't go into the gym in order to look a certain way?
Yeah, very few.
Very few. Very few actually enjoy this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. And so with the gut, you talk a lot about the gut with everyone you see, right? Because that is the most important. But so what are your feelings? Because I have my feelings, but also it's not my specialty. So on over exercise and leaky gut or intestinal permeability. And we're happy to explain what that is if our listeners here don't know.
They're all correlated. So what ends up happening is when you're under eating, you're adding this stress factor, and stress can come from a different variety of ways, whether that be through exercise. Exercise is a form of acute stress, or it comes from your eating habits, and under eating, that is a form of stress that the body is going under. But any sort of stress elicits an inflammatory response. So when you're doing both at the same time and you're over exercising, which is extra stress on the body, and then you're also under eating, extra stress on the body, you kind of create this perfect haven for leaky gut to start happening, which just means that the increased stress and the increased inflammation is causing the intestinal barrier to open up a little bit, because it's not as solid. There's not enough epithelial cells there regrowing and regenerating, because there's just so much inflammation throughout the body. So yeah, definitely a compounding problem.
Yeah, I see it a lot for people that are very focused, especially on fitness. And I know you posted about this recently, and I was interested in your feelings for glutamine for recovery. So L-glutamine, I mean, an amino acid that a lot of people use for that intestinal permeability. Mm-hmm. So how do you use that, or do you not use that at all?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't use L-glutamine at all. I know a lot of people are thinking about it. They see it a little bit in a supplement, so on and so forth. I've seen a coach use it once. He had like 20 grams. Like, you have to super dose this stuff. Like, it's like 20 grams twice a day or 10 grams multiple times. And even then, like, really no help there.
Yeah, not a significant shift from not supplementing something.
Yeah, it is really not really helpful. And the studies say this, with the research isn't clear at all. So people have tried it and it's just not helpful. I've personally experienced, but
yeah, I use it a lot for leaky gut, but I don't use it by itself. I mean, very rarely. I will use it by itself, but it's very rare. So a lot of people, they read about it, they hear a lot of functional people talk about it, so they start it. But it usually needs more like helpers and friends along to really like soothe the gut lining. But I don't use it for recovery for people and muscle recovery, any of that.
Yeah, definitely not for muscle recovery.
No.
For muscle recovery, you definitely want a complete protein, because that's what's going to stimulate muscle protein synthesis most optimally, is getting in that 10 to 12 grams of essential amino acids, which is probably commonly found in about 25 plus grams of like a whey protein powder, or a nice 4-ounce serving of meat.
Yeah. Do you use or tell people to avoid like any supplementation of, I guess I have two questions. Supplementation of like branched chain amino acids. Do you use those ever for people? No. Just shaking her head, guys. No. Yeah, I feel like everyone that isn't even like competing, that's just a gym goer, uses it.
Yeah, so a while ago there was evidence saying that a BCAA is going to help you with recovery in the gym, and soreness, and that may be true if you're very, very beginning of lifting. But what we've seen is that what's even better than that is have an essential amino acid, have the complete 9 essential amino acids. It's the same little drink that you can drink. It's just called BAA instead of BCAA. That's one alternative. But also the fact that our bodies are able to kind of sustain that breakdown process when we exercise. So just having a meal before you go to the gym or having a meal right after, basically going to do a very similar thing.
Yeah, and this one I wasn't planning on asking, but pre-workout. I just need to know your thoughts on pre-workouts.
Okay.
I know my thoughts, but you tell me.
No, you probably have the opposite thoughts of me because I am a crack queen. I love pre-workout. Yeah, I love pre-workout, but it's also my only caffeine source. And it's also, I do not take anything that I don't know exactly the ingredients that are in it. I take very I would call it clean pre-workouts. And again, I don't drink coffee. I don't drink teas, caffeinated teas. So that's like my one little thing that I do.
If you ever listen to my stuff, guys, you'll know coffee is like my favorite thing. Coffee and red wine in the world. It could be decaf. I don't even care. I just love coffee. I know someone recently that was taking it, and I this is not my realm. I don't work in sports nutrition. I've dabbled in it, but they came to me they weren't a client. They were just showing me the pre-workout they were having, and they were having all this acid reflux. They were actually vomiting at the gym. They were vomiting after they were doing CrossFit, and they were vomiting after they would work out excessively. And we kind of went through the diet, all of that, and they actually felt better when they're eating these like really high fat, high protein. Because at first I was like, maybe it's just sitting in their stomach too long and it's coming up because they're not giving enough time to like digest the food. But they sent me their pre-workout and it was just full of garbage. It had like sucralose, all this stuff. Yeah. And so they swapped it to a very clean one that I was like, I don't know if it's going to benefit you, but like I have no issue with this supplement.
Do you mind if I ask which one they swapped to?
Oh gosh, I'm not going to know the name. It was like some beet-based. I'll be able to find it. I can comment on that later. But they were doing great. Vomiting stopped. Everything.
Yeah. I hear that all the time too, because some people, they're like, oh, I tried a new pre-workout and like I almost passed out. And I'm like, why are you not reading the ingredients on these things? Like I will tell you 99% of them are trash. They're so dangerous for the average person. Like you can't just pick it up and take it. You really have to sit down to understand the ingredients. So I feel like I call myself like, I'm the crack queen, but that's also because I literally know every single thing that they put in.
You know what you're doing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm a professional, so you know.
Yeah, I've taken the time to look into this. And so, yeah.
Yeah, but it was amazing to see the change because I was having to give them DGL and all this stuff just to let them get through a workout. And I was like, something's off here. And when they actually sent me the ingredients, I was like, yeah, you shouldn't take that.
Yeah, and some of them use sugar alcohols too. Mm-hmm. And you're like burping up, and I'm like, guys.
Yeah, so irritating.
I say like when you're starting out, like we start out CorePerform, like no pre-workouts, no coffee. Just get rid of that cortisol, that harboring, get that water out.
And tell everyone what they can look for on the label that's going to show them the sugar alcohols.
Erythritol is going to be the number one. That
basically anything ending in like OL, you're going to see it, and that isn't it's not going to spike your blood sugar, but it's going to be irritating to the gut, possibly act as laxative, cause a lot of burping. It's going to be fun. So avoid it if you are sensitive to it for sure. So that's good. And then I know, do you have any questions or topics you want to touch on before I throw some spitfire at you here?
I was thinking maybe we could also talk about why athletes have specifically gut health problems in general.
Yeah.
What happens when we work out is that there's actually decreased blood flow to the gut, and that's why we start seeing those crampings, and almost up to 70% of people who exercise will experience GI difficulties. The pain is usually more common in people who do like endurance events or in younger populations. And typically the more fit you are, the less severe the symptoms are. So when you're first starting out, getting into the gym, you might have more severity in your symptoms. But it also will increase the severity if you are increasing your intensity or you're dehydrated. things like that. So decreased blood flow to the gut is a huge one. Another one is mechanical forces. So the actual fact that your organs are jiggling when you're running or anything is actually going to cause minor inflammation and irritation. And then increased sympathetic tone too. So your neuroendocrine function, altered GI hormones while you're working out due to the blood vessels expanding and the blood flow. That also has been shown to give athletes specifically complications. And there are a few strategies too that you can do in order to prevent that, especially I believe one of the questions was about endurance training, right?
Believe so too. Well, there was one on basically what can marathoners, which is endurance training, do for their gut health.
Yeah, so this is for example answering that question basically, but making it a little bit more general for all athletes. So you do want to make sure that you're having carbohydrates with your pre-workout routine, and you want to make sure that you're training with the carbohydrates, because the more studies have shown that the more carbohydrates you eat, the better you become adapted at processing them while you're working out. So it's actually beneficial for you to make it a part of your routine. You'll become more efficient at utilizing the carbohydrates. It'll increase your performance. Other things are like avoiding high fiber meals, avoiding high fat meals, avoiding dehydration in general. That's a huge one. Electrolytes as well, because those can also impact the amount of cramping that you undergo. But a lot of things that I've also seen and heard from other people is low FODMAP. So low FODMAP has been shown to help a lot of athletes. That is research. But I have some people who have reached out to me saying, "Oh, I'll only go low FODMAP like 2 days before, and that'll usually help." And that works, I guess, for some people. But just like you go low FODMAP for 2 days before, you should also probably avoid going extra high fiber 2 days before and things like that. And the reason why I think that happens is because of the colon transit time, right? I know you were recently talking about that, but I think that's really what it ultimately comes down to.
So interesting. I mean, the only real focus I have on the marathoners, I see it mostly, sorry to pick on runners and marathoners, but I try to, for the most part, I mean, I'm never going to tell someone not to live their dream of like running a marathon, but I usually see more harm than good in those situations for people. Especially people that they're not training for like one, right? They're like lifetime marathoners because of everything you're talking about with that chronic stress into the gut and that chronic like irritation. And I always see like long term, not I don't want to say always like every person, but in my practice I see they always end up having so many different like cortisol and hormonal and gut issues that like it is one of those triggers that we talk about of removing the stress or just lessening. It doesn't mean don't ever run again, but I do find that the marathoning is just like too much for people, a lot of people's bodies, if they're not in a healthy state already, right? If you're already chronically stressed out over life, as everyone is, it becomes a problem, right?
Yeah.
So you
I have one client actually, and she was like, "My goal is to run a marathon in next year." And I said, "All right, well, right now, what we're going to do before we get to that point actually is we're going to build up your metabolism. So we're going through a reverse diet with her. We're building up that metabolism. We're actually, I got her off as much cardio as I could, and I'm getting her into the gym resistance training because I want to build her muscles while we can, and then we can focus on the endurance aspect after that." And making sure that we're, again, by reversing her up to this point, what we're doing is basically optimizing her metabolism to kind of digest all these carbohydrates. Obviously, we've now worked on healing the gut through the CorePerform protocol. Now we're focusing more on that reverse diet, getting as much food in as possible, weight training, putting some muscle on, and then she'll go off and we'll be training for the marathon after that. So there's definitely different cycles that you can do too. So it's not like a telltale all. Like if you do want to train for a marathon, you can totally do that, but definitely make sure to have what I call like an off season where you focus on other things in your life. And that's a really great way to balance it out.
I like that you're doing the resistance training. I find too often, at least in outside of your like world of fitness, you know, people, especially women, I don't know if it's because it's something most of us weren't brought up doing, is, you know what I mean, is lifting weights and things like that, or if it, we gain muscle, we gain weight sometimes, and if we're afraid of that. But women do not do enough resistance training, which is like the number one thing they should probably be doing.
Yeah, I love, my favorite phrase is, Dasha, I want to be toned. And I'm like, okay, well, that means we're going to have to build some muscle and gain some weight. Because guess what toned means? It means you have muscle on your body. And it is not formed by doing cardio.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's hard. That's a hard shift for a lot of people when their providers, especially, you know what I mean, aren't trained in getting you fit in that way. So
and it's so important for females, especially too, resistance training with the bones and the density. So yeah, I love to incorporate that as much as I can, especially with the runners who suffer from a lot of bone distress and GI distress.
Yeah. Do you do fitness at all, or do you at least discuss it with all of your clients in CorePerform?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So you're getting you're getting more than just what you think with getting an RD there.
Yeah.
Right. So that's awesome for anyone interested. I didn't want to cut you off. So anything else you had to add on that? But I have so many questions, I'm just gonna have to pick your brain one day.
For sure. We can do another one if you want follow-up questions. The other question I always get, I don't know if anyone asked this either, but is about whey supplements. And they'll be like, so I just wanted to touch on this because I think it's really important to realize that every single whey supplement is actually manufactured differently, and it comes from a different cow, which means that it has a different virome. So what they've seen in research is people who supplement whey, they actually are establishing different viromes in their stomachs as a result of the different whey that they're buying from whatever company. So I personally am not I do not digest whey very well. I think that yes, it is the gold standard. It is the best thing that you can have for muscle protein synthesis in order to spike it in the most efficient manner. However, there are ways around it, which is why, again, I'm creating my own protein powder that is plant-based, but still optimizing the amino acid ratios so that you are able to just stick to one. If you do, by the way, use a vegan protein powder, mine doesn't count because mine I'm optimizing, but if you use a standard vegan protein powder, you should always double scoop because they never are fortified with enough essential amino acids. So always make sure you take 2 scoops at a time after your workout. If you do whey, you can do 1 scoop at a time. But I just have seen that they're just filled with crap. Like people react to them so much. And what's funny is that I'm not going to mention the company, but there are very, very famous and popular supplement companies that have taken over the fitness world that actually my clients all react to, like very poorly, even though it's supposed to be a quote unquote isolate that your body should basically be able to absorb it very quickly within an hour. And they just all react to it. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. If this is a pure supplement, no one should be reacting to it. But again, it has to do with the cows that it comes from, the manufacturing processes, the virome that the milk that it was carries with it. So
what's the base of yours that you're creating?
Mine's going to be a pea, chia, and hemp blend. So the reason why I blend it is because hemp, has all 9 essential amino acids, so it's able to boost it a little bit. But then the pea has the gold standard, and the chia kind of adds as the accent.
Yeah. So one of the questions to relate to this, we asked everyone what their questions were, so that's what we're going through here. But was that they can't do pea protein or any lactose or whey isolate. So what is the best protein powder for their sensitive little gut over here, in your opinion?
So there's 2 options. You could do something like a beef protein. You could also do an egg. If you don't have an egg allergy, you can do an egg protein. I will say that the egg, you just have to be careful if you personally have some sort of heart condition, anything like that. Just be aware that the sodium on any sort of egg white protein is always going to be in the near 40% of your daily value. So if you start supplementing with it, just know that that's about 40% of your daily value of sodium that is used in that. And that's because it's a stabilizer for the eggs itself. So
I also find people do well with hemp protein in the gut usually, once it's already broken down in powder form, so it's easy to digest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Taste of
pea
it.
tends to be, it's interesting that they can't do pea. They must just have an issue with pea because that tends to be one of the most hypoallergenic
Yeah.
for the gut. Yeah. So I agree with, I do the beef a lot for people as well, but you always want to make sure it's clean. So it sounds like hers might be a good option for anyone that does want more of a vegan, easy to digest powder. Yeah. Unfortunately not for them, but everyone else. Unfortunately. Yeah, so we did that one. I think that's so interesting. Another one that someone did around for you around more that supplementation aspect was what supplementation, which I know might be the answer might be none. Do you recommend to complement the diet, so not avoiding the diet, for building lean muscle mass?
The only one and the tried and true one is creatine. Everyone, I believe, should be on creatine. It's the only one that's actually been shown to have an impact on increasing lean body mass when supplemented. And it's completely dirt cheap. You do not need to buy the micro ionized $40 one. It is literally $8. It is so cheap to buy. So if you're not supplementing with that and you're trying to gain some lean muscle size, I would definitely try and incorporate it. It's worth doing. When you do start it though, just know that there is a loading phase. So you can either load it up over the course of, I believe it's 2 days, 20 grams, 10 grams in the morning, 10 grams at night. Maybe it's 5. They'll tell you if you Google it. But what I like to do is I just like to say, take 5 grams every single day. And the reason why I don't like to load it is because sometimes people experience bloat or water retention with it. And by kind of just letting it load automatically by tapering it every single day and taking a daily amount, it kind of negates that like one day where you're just like hammering it.
Do you recommend, so you were saying kind of like the morning night thing, do you recommend they take it at all around exercise? Like, should it be dosed at a certain time when you do?
Absolutely. So when there is studies that show that any sort of supplementation is actually better to take after a workout. And the reason why is because your body is in such a depleted state that it is able to absorb everything a lot better. So I always say, if you're going to take creatine, take it in your protein shake, for example, put it in your scoop of protein, or have like even your vitamins and everything. Like you could even have it then as well. You're just priming your body basically to be more absorptive at that state.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this about me. You probably don't. So I used to be a dietitian prior to doing full functional medicine. I was a dietitian on a college campus. So I did a lot of the sports dietetics for all of the Division I athletes. And I also played Division I basketball in college. So I'm also very I was into fitness and optimizing well-being around it, but I've always just been much more into like team sports for myself versus like going to the gym and doing things. But I always saw, I had a lot of success with them, but I always saw people were so focused, and I still see it in like, especially women who are trying to exercise, like they eat before, which is great, but they're focusing so much on the foods and what's fueling their body in the before, but it's actually to me more important on the after, and that like window of opportunity when your cells are most sensitive to nutrient uptake, right? They want to repair and rebuild, and when people don't have that like protein carb after they do that intense exercise, they're not going to rebuild their muscle.
Yeah, so there's basically a 4-hour window, what we like to call. So if you eat before your workout, the next time you have to eat again is 4 hours later. And the reason why is because muscle protein synthesis is best when you let it it kind of looks like a bell-shaped curve. So when you start out and you just eat, it kind of rises up to the top of the bell shape and then it goes back down. And the best bet is to let it continuously go down to the very bottom before spiking it again, because what you don't want to do is just have it consistently elevated. It's actually that difference, that drop and then that rise. So that's why we give it that 4 hours. The 4 hours will give it enough time from beginning to end of drop. So if you, for example, don't work out, if you work out in the morning and you haven't eaten and then you go work out, First of all, I would not recommend that in the first place, ever, ever, ever. At least be drinking, at least have a shake before you go, or at least be drinking EAAs, and make sure that you're having some carbohydrates to fuel your workout. It is just the only way you're going to optimize it. So that, but also just having that 4-hour window. So always make sure, like, you don't have to slam your protein shake after, but just that 4-hour window. Just make sure that within that next 4 hours you are eating.
Yeah, that's great advice. And your other question, which is super broad and kind of, you just basically said it, but I don't know if you have any other tips, was somebody asked how they should eat around training. So if they're actually training versus just, you know what I mean, just going to the gym for an hour or so a day.
Totally. So this is actually what I work on with my clients too, because I remember I had one girl come to me and she was saying how, Dasha, I can't eat after my workouts because I have chronic diarrhea, because I'm so inflamed from running that like anything that I put in my body will just flush out. I will say that the best thing you can do in that situation is actually learn what works for your body. You need to, first of all, lower inflammation in all of their aspects in order to optimize that performance. If you're going to have to run, that's okay. Account for that stress in your bucket, right? I think we both talk about that bucket that you fill up with stress or whatever. If you need to dedicate half of that bucket to your running, okay, but we need to make sure that the rest of it is empty. So what I did with her was we went through CorePerform. We found what foods work for her, and we found her food sensitivities. We cleared her out, helped the lining, rebuild the lining, and then now she can go, she can run, she can eat literally whatever she wants when she comes back from running, because she's just learned how to optimize her diet for her gut health.
Yeah. It's so important. And this is also a little bit why someone should work with someone who both knows food and exercise. If this is right, if this is their goal and this is like their focus. Too many people, I think, it's great to do things on your own and be motivated, but it's really great to have that like person in your corner giving you actually like science-driven data and tried and true data, right? Things that they're doing all day long.
Yeah, and it's really, really important too. I want to just say that, like, carbohydrates are important, but B, make sure you're always pairing it with something. Do not just have carbohydrates, because I promise you, you will crash. Whether that be in the middle of your workout, you will become hypoglycemic, or after your workout and you just finished eating, you will become reactive. It's called reactive hypoglycemia. It's when you eat too many carbs at once, your blood sugar drops as a crash after spiking so much. So definitely, I know a lot of people, they're harping on the carbs, and yes, incorporate the carbs, but make sure you're adding a little bit of fats, a little bit of protein, something to balance it out and stabilize that response so you're not suffering as a result.
I would say my mantra is protein, fat, fiber. And then depending on the individual and all of that is where the carb and what types of carbs come in. But protein, fat, fiber, stabilize that blood sugar, that digestive process, keep you satiated, energized.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like that you mentioned that, and not being afraid of the carbs, but being able to know how to eat them and when, right? To fuel. So, so my question, this is a selfish one, but is like your top 3 tips to everyone listening on optimizing gut health for fitness. So things that they're able to do kind of on their own without having that one-on-one guidance or supplements or things like that, which I know you're not big in anyway.
I would have to say just exactly what I said just now. Like, how do you optimize your performance in the gym is decrease stress in every other aspect of your life that you can, which includes eliminating whatever's causing you GI distress. So getting to the root cause of whatever your gut problems are, making sure you're having healthy bowel movements every single day. First, work on your gut. Then reintroduce, I'm literally saying what I do in CorePerform, but first, heal your gut, reintroduce the food so you identify the food sensitivities that you do have so that you know around your training you probably shouldn't be doing that. Finding what foods work for you and what foods your body metabolizes best. A lot of people get really shocked when they start experimenting, right? Because there's a lot of different things on the market right now. There are things like gels. There's You can have just a Gatorade when you do endurance running, and that's sugar, yeah. But you also could do like a cyclic dextrin, and that's going to have different osmolality, which means that it's going to be absorbed by the GI a lot differently. So again, just testing out different things, finding what works for you, your body, your specific fitness goals, and type of training that you prefer to do. Those would be my biggest tips. Is really just finding what works for you. I know it's so hard to do, but I think that's why coaches like us exist, where I'm able to guide you through something so that you can figure it out and you can empower yourself. I'm not here to coach you for the rest of your life. I just want to teach you how to find it out for yourself.
And that's amazing. And that's what I do too. And we just maybe do it in different populations. You know what I mean? So it's amazing. So tell all of our lovely listeners today, like, how can they find you in CorePerform and how can they work with you if they're interested?
Absolutely. So as mentioned, my Instagram is at Dasha Fitness. My website is fitwithdasha.com. And you're always welcome to shoot me an email, shoot me a question. It's coreperformnutrition@gmail.com. And then also we have a Facebook group that I post monthly grocery lists and anti-inflammatory recipes to, and that is CorePerform. I think it's Protein Launch Group at this point, but I'm going to be switching it soon. So just Google some CorePerform and
it'll appear.
Yeah, it'll help.
Yeah, you guys can reach out to me too if you have if you're struggling, and I can get you connected. So this has been amazing. And I'm so happy you came on, and I'm so happy because this is new for Gut Honest Truth, is we haven't had somebody talking about fitness. So I'm super pumped, and we're gonna have to do this again and get everyone educated in all their answers. But if you're interested, please seek Dasha out and look up CorePerform and see if it's the right fit for you. Anything else, Dasha, you want to add?
Just a huge thank you to you. It's always a pleasure, Katie, talking to you.
Yeah, you too. So this has been amazing. So thank you for listening, guys. And the episode will be released soon, so you can ask any other questions. And if you are looking for more answers, follow at Dasha Fitness, because she posts amazing things all the time for free, and you will get the best advice. So thank you so much, and we're going to have you back on.
Okay, bye.